Well, hello and welcome to Elvenhome. I hope you don't mind having a running session right at the start with no introduction first. You'll have seen Nunney Castle running, which has plainly arrived, and it's an absolutely fabulous engine. I'm very, very pleased with it. It runs very smoothly on the layout, which is encouraging. And as you'll have seen, I've also managed to complete the wiring to enable a complete circuit. But back to Nunney Castle, the engine is everything that you see in the Bachmann video. If you've seen the Bachmann video, the variety of sounds on it, there are 28 sound functions. 2 of them are volume up and volume down. The others range from obviously turning the sound on and off to, as you heard, some of the whistles. There are other sounds that are a bit more subtle, some of the speaking sounds. There are 4 or 6 things where the driver and the fireman speak to each other with such priceless prose as going under Bill and right ho Norm. So the drivers are obviously Bill and Norm. But it is just superb, and I didn't have it at full volume either. And when the pressure valves lift, which I got it to do in the middle, which is one of the functions, that it is seriously noisy. So it's a tremendous little engine. It's also something where you have to adapt your way of driving it. With most engines, when you cut the power, the train very quickly comes to a stop, if not instantly. The way this is set up is, first of all, that the CVs have been set up so the engine accelerates and decelerates more slowly. But the engine will happily coast when you turn the power off. And depending on the weight on the back will depend the length that it will coast. So you have to use the function F2 to apply the brakes, and you will have heard at the end of that session the brakes being applied with a very satisfying wheel squeal at the end. And so you have to get used to bringing the engine in and slowing it down at the right time to enable it to stop where you want it to do. So it's been a tremendous thing to have Nunney Castle. It's well worth the waiting for. And if Farish are going to bring out, or Bachmann are going to bring out more sound fitted engines, I shall certainly be thinking about buying them. It looks to be a fairly straightforward thing to do, to fit sound to the other castles that are out there, because there's some very clear instructions in the that came with the engine of how to fit sound. The tender, which is where the speaker sits, has been built to take a certain sized, I think it's the Zimmo Sugar Cube speaker, and there's very little soldering you have to do to attach a sound decoder as opposed to the ordinary decoder that you might have just to run DCC, just to the blanking plug, sorry. So, tremendous thing, really impressed with it. I think they've actually sold out at the moment, so they've obviously got to order some more and bring them over, but it doesn't surprise me in the slightest because it really is very, very good. As I've also said, I've managed to complete the wiring. I've got pretty much 2/3 of the way through putting all the point motors in, and I'll come back to those. But I just wanted to see Nunney Castle do a proper circuit rather than it was running up and down at the back at the station, which didn't seem to be good enough really. So I wired in at the front here. You'll see the double slip and the point beyond it, and then the straight section, all of those because of the insulated joiners that are necessary for changing polarity of frogs and things. The whole of that section had to be wired in, which has been done. Put it all together, ran a train across it, and it ran beautifully, I'm pleased to say. And then the castle was able to get some speed up and run round. And so that's been very good, not least because it shows that my original plan does actually work. A train can get its way around there, and clearances are working so far. The point motors, as I said, I'm 2/3 of the way through. If I just come down here for a moment, because I'm going to talk a bit about the wiring the point motors in. Last month I showed you a picture of the underside of this board on which all this whole of the MPD sits. And here's another picture which just shows you with a bit more of the wiring that's sitting in there, which is something of a bird's nest. Once you start getting all the wires in, you can the wiring, just the point motors themselves, is quite straightforward. Then you've got to get the cables in to give it power, and also to take the things over to the switches, which will actually make the point motors move. And one of the things that was always worrying me about that was, to some extent, how on earth would I know which set of wires were running to which points? It's fine when you're at the point end, and it's fine when you're at the switch end, but how do you know what's going on in between? And whilst I was in Ryman's, I saw, which you can see in front of you, which I will come on to just a bit more, so you can see it a bit more clearly, this pot of cable ties. They're very small cable ties, which make them perfect for controlling wires. I don't have great bulky things I need to tie down. But more importantly, there are 10 different colours, and there is 100 of each colour. And it suddenly dawned on me when I was looking at this in the way that it does, that actually if you've got 10 different colours of something, then you can assign a colour to each of the 10 digits from 0 to 9. And then by combining those colours, you can then have a numbering system, essentially. So if I show you, which is now coming up, I hope, the detail of a section, you'll see various colours that are set in the holding the cable ties together. And if you look, you'll see, for example, that there are 2 green cable ties. I'll see if I can find some way of highlighting on this image where I'm looking. And because green is number 1, then 2 green ones is number 11. And similarly, as I go through, I'll be using other colours to give me, I've got in total the 24 points, I think, all told. So the most I'll ever need to do is to be able to demonstrate number 24 for a run of wire, and to do that I would use a yellow and a red, and I keep them in the same order. Looking at the layout, the tens is on the left and the unit is on the right, so I know I haven't got them the wrong way round. So I can number them, and that is working a treat underneath the board, because already you can start working out which set of wires are going where when it all starts getting a bit confusing. And as you will have seen just briefly here, I was speaking about this last time, but I hadn't actually wired any through. These are the cables coming through from underneath after they've completed their run, and they will all eventually, once they stop twisting themselves, there's a socket equivalent to the spade plug, which will come up through the board, and that obviously will go down under into the switches. As each point is put in, the point is being tested with the relevant switch, so I know that the switch and the point are both working, and that's been fun. There have been times when nothing happens. There was one time in particular, it was clicking on one side and not clicking on another of the point motor, and I tried all the switches and didn't look at the simple thing that if one half is working and the other half isn't, it probably means something's come unsoldered, and sure as eggs, the common return on the other side of the point had come away. The moment that was resoldered, everything worked fine. But one of the things it teaches you, for those of you that are following me because you're just setting out on the road, is about this idea of working the problem, that you just have to go through it in a logical sequence until you isolate what the problem is. And don't be disheartened, because I know when I first started and I was wiring something else up and it just wouldn't work, you just have to keep working at the problem, and eventually you will come with a solution. And talking of which, if I go back to the turntable, bless it, the turntable I built a long while ago, and I thought I would try and get some power in, because it is meant to be powered underneath. You can see here, let me make sure I can see what you're seeing. You can see here the 2 wires that go in that take the power, and these little copper pins that are here hold two semicircular pieces of copper that sit under the turntable. I can't take the turntable off because it's now firmly in position and has a collar there to hold it. They're in two halves because if it was a complete circle, of course, you would have a short circuit. So at some point, and there are two brass pins that sit under the track, one is here and one is there, and they're sprung, and the idea of them is that they go down onto the copper and give power to the track. At some point they have to reach the middle where there's no power, and then when they go beyond, they reverse the polarity on the track, which means you've got to be a little bit careful about knowing which the polarity is for the stabling sections that will be coming off your track. But when I put the power on and connected it up, I was getting no power into this at all. There was nothing. And I eventually realised that whether I liked it or not, the base here is slightly bowed. I don't know whether you can see that, but I think that isn't meant to be bowed. And there's not much you can do about that because it's not going to stay in. So the brass pins simply could not make contact with the copper, and therefore no power was going to get into the system. The only solution I could think of for that, eventually when I worked it out, is that underneath, I wonder if you can see here, underneath the track, if I come in closer you may get an idea. You can't really see, but as along here there are little holes underneath the track. I'm not entirely sure why. I suspect it's just to do with building it, moulding it. But rather helpfully, that means there is exposed track underneath. And so the only answer was to take a piece of wire and solder it through one of these little holes to the track and solder the other end to the pin. And doing that gave me the connection that I needed. So I had to bodge the turntable a little bit to get it to work, but the engines run very smoothly on it once I did that. And that can now go into its position in due course once I've finished all the wiring of points and the laying of the track on the baseboard. Which is really the main thing for the next month. I mentioned last time that I was due to retire. I have now retired. This is the first Tuesday of retirement. And we've got quite a lot on in the next month, and then we're away for a good while in the Western Isles through September. So I want to try and get quite a bit done because I would like to do another video probably towards the end of August, but the next video after that won't be till the middle of October because we're away so much, and I won't get time to do much on the layout. But the aim for the next month is to complete the wiring of the points, to fit the points into all the switches and test the track, and to get the second loop running so that I'll be able to run engines obviously in both ways, not least this, which is an extremely generous gift from some friends of ours, Nathan and Ray, as a retirement gift. It's DCC fitted. It's a B17 in LNER apple green, and it runs beautifully. So I think having that going one way, Nunney Castle going the other, the pannier climbing its way up to Sharky's End will be quite something. And if I can, I would like to try and get that so you can see it in the next video, which I think will probably be almost the last week of August, to give myself plenty of time. As some of you will know if you followed me before, we live in Edinburgh, and Edinburgh is getting ready to party. The Jazz Festival started last Thursday. The Fringe starts the end of next week, a week after next, yes, in a couple of weeks' time. And we will be very busy, both with people visiting us and in us getting out to see various shows. So I hope you found this helpful and informative. I am having such fun now that I've got Nunney Castle running. And I look forward to speaking to you again in about a month's time, and I hope you can see trains running in both directions and all the points motors working as well. So until I speak to you again, goodbye. If you're having a summer holiday, go and have a good one. If you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe. and I'll see you again. Bye bye.